Hey, so it's time for another mod. I wanted to do an outside air temperature mod. That's what we call, well, I don't know how else to say exterior air temperature. Outside air temperature is what we call it in aerospace. So I wanted to know what the ambient air temperature was so that I would have a better idea of what the conditions were, because I am riding around very close to freezing right now. And I know that pretty much everything nowadays is digital, and we should remember that once upon a time everything was analog, and there's some very simple solutions. You just take this oven thermometer right here and you can just zap strap this to the top of your... I'm just kidding. So I'm actually gonna install... I mean, that would work, but that would suck. I've got this Blue Sea 12 volt OLED temperature display. It actually looks really cool. I don't have it plugged in right now. I shortened the temperature sensor leads quite a bit to make them quite small. And I'm going to mount this right behind my windscreen. And that way it'll be protected from the wind, protected from the sun, because I don't want the sun shining down on the temp sensor and distorting my readings. And it'll be nice and legible out of the way. So hopefully this works. I'm gonna have to put a couple holes in my windscreen so that I can zap strap this to the windscreen. So hopefully I don't fuck up my windscreen and crack it. So we'll see how that goes. So that's it. So I'll be showing you in this video where the accessories front connections are. I can show you the back too, since it's open already. For the power, and I'll show you how I wire it up. I'm also going to be wiring up some Hella horns that I bought. I don't know if I'm going to show you that or not. It's kind of boring. I already mounted them, but I'll just show you where they are maybe. And that's pretty much it. So hope you enjoy. Thanks. Okay, so the accessory power is over here. This is the front right of the bike. The fairing is removed right now. You do not need to remove the fairing in order to access this. I also removed the DC to DC voltage converter down here. You also don't need to remove that. I just removed this stuff because I was trying to find where they were. The instruction manual says that the accessory wiring is right here. It's pointing right here in the diagram. And so I was trying to look back here and find out what was going on. It says underneath the right front side of the tank that you'll find the accessory wiring. So I didn't find it there, but I did peek a little bit of the label through here. So what you're gonna see is that there's this plastic triangle piece that goes right here, pretty much right here in here. And so you remove that with the one screw. You can pull that out, and then these guys were buried down inside of this area down here. And so if you look down in here and you grab some pliers or you reach down there with your fingers, you'll be able to pull out the two spade female connectors for accessories 1 and the 2 spade connector for accessories 2. Of note, accessories 1 is labeled for me here, and accessories 2 was not labeled. There's also this sealed off connector. It might be hard for you to see, but there's this capped connector right here. So I don't know if this is maybe going to be used for something else down the road. Like I did order the OEM Husqvarna heated grips, so maybe those might plug into there. I'd have to check the wiring diagram to find out. Maybe I'll put it on the screen if I can figure it out. And yeah, sorry, the accessories 1 is labeled, but don't just trust the labeling. You want to check for yourself, and accessories 2 was not labeled, so I can only assume that that's accessories 2. So what I did was I just took my multimeter, I metered both of these, and I determined that yes, this one is hot, which means that it's always on. It's just directly connected to the battery, which does correspond with accessories 1. So that is labeled correctly. For me, that's a black and yellow wire with a yellow and brown wire, it looks like. And then accessories 2 is a blue and red, which is the positive, and the black and yellow, which is the negative. And you can verify that that's accessories 2, which is a switched power connection, because when you put your key in here, and you turn the bike on, you'll get a 12 volts reading off of here. And when you've turned your bike off, you should be seeing 0 volts, which is super important because you don't want to be connecting power consumers to this that are going to drain your battery. You only want to be connecting stuff to your hot if it's something that you want to always be on. Like I have a GPS tracker on my bike, so I have that wired into accessories 1 at the rear. Also of note is that there's only 1 fuse and 1 circuit for accessories 1 and accessories 2, which is for both your rear and your front. So in my case, accessories 1 or 2 at the rear, I'm going to have some stuff hooked up there, and then I'm going to have some things hooked up here. And so if you're connecting a lot of things, like I'm going to be hooking up a seat warmer and potentially also some heated grips and stuff, you know, that stuff can scale pretty quickly and start using up a lot of power. So you want to make sure that's going to be within the limit. So the limit is 10 amps. That's what it's fused for. Obviously, you should be keeping your current consumption lower than that, but you just want to keep tabs on that, especially if you're hooking up stuff in the rear and the front and then not realizing that it's all the same thing. So so that's it. So that's where they are. They were not covered or protected in any way. They were just loose and hanging out. It's not very protected in here, so if you are going to be going in here for any reason, I would recommend coming in here and just slapping some heat shrink or something else on these connectors, maybe some dielectric grease, and protecting them so that if you ever do need to use them, they won't be corroded and messed up. There's also a bunch of other connectors in here. I've got the front headlight off, and there was quite a few. Front headlight is just these 2 connectors here, and then all these other connectors are for other things. There's here, this one's not connected, again, could be for something else. Maybe this is for the heated grips, who knows? Maybe it's for some other kind of modification or thing that Husqvarna planned and never used, or maybe it's for something that you can buy, or maybe they intended this for auxiliary lighting. I have 0 idea. But this is not a wire that goes to the headlight, so I'm curious what this could be used for. If it was a headlight, if it was connected to the headlight wiring, like maybe it is, but I doubt it. But if it is, then I could use it as a switched, like a headlight high beam switched power source to trigger like auxiliary lights to go into high beam mode. Oh, and look at this, there's already moisture in my turn signal, my OEM turn signal. So this bike is 2 months old, and already I have moisture in my turn signal. Also, this is super loose. I can just move this around by hand, so I guess I'll have to tighten that up. Jesus. Anyway, I'm going to be changing the turn signals anyways. I've got some on order from Denali, but that's not good to see. So if you've got a 2024 Husqvarna, maybe check out your headlight. Sorry, not headlight, turn signals. What else? Yeah, nothing much to say else about the wiring up here, but just in case you wanted to see, because I happen to have it open. And if you look down there, underneath my radiator, I just replaced the stock horn with a Hella horn. I've got the dual tone horns. I've got not the super tone, but the gosh, I don't remember what the other one's called. And the other ones I just mounted to a bolt sort of connected to the radiator. Behind the radiator, there's like a bracket for it, so I just put the other horn back there. I don't know if that's a super good place to mount it. It didn't seem like a super great spot, but I also didn't have many options, so I've got it there for now. It might change in the future. All right, so here's a look at my dashboard, and my plan is basically to take the temp sensor and install it right here behind the front windscreen. And so my plan is to put a couple holes back here, like 4 holes, and then zap strap this temp sensor in. It's not the cleanest install to zap strap something behind your windscreen, but I honestly don't think it's gonna look bad. And installing it on the fairing just wasn't wide enough. I was gonna do it on maybe the front right fairing, but there's not a lot of, like, the tank doesn't go all the way to the tip. As you can see, like on the, this is where the tank ends on the right side. So if you follow that over to the left side, you can see that the tip of the fairing has a bunch of space in it. That's actually where I'm holding my GPS tracker, in here. But the display for the temperature sensor doesn't really fit well here. It's just a little bit too narrow. I could maybe squeeze it in just at the tip, but I didn't think that I had enough room, so I'm gonna not try and do that and mess up my fairing. Instead, I'm just gonna go straight here. Plus, it'll be easier for me to see it. And it'll just be zap strapped in with a couple little holes, and I've already vinyl wrapped this anyway, so if I hate it there and I don't like it, I can unzap strap it, I can re-vinyl wrap it, cover up the holes as required, and it'll be like an easy thing to do. The only thing I'm worried about is cracking my windscreen plastic, so we'll have to see how that goes. Okay, so I just used my Dremel with the little nub attachment, and I was able just to drill these 4 holes here. It worked out pretty good. It kind of melts it as it goes along, and I just clipped away any excess plastic that was on top, and now I'm gonna install it. Okay, so we are going to be using quite a few tools. This will be a good learning experience about spade connectors. Here's the wiring diagram that comes with the Blue Sea temperature sensor. Basically all it says is, hey, if you want it in Fahrenheit, just wire it up positive to positive, negative to negative, and if you want it in Celsius, just wire it opposite. I feel like that's a personal attack. I feel like Celsius should have been positive to positive and negative to negative, like the conventional way, and then Fahrenheit should be the backwards way. But hey, whatever. So yeah, you can do Celsius. Fun fact is that when it goes below 1 degree Celsius, which is just about hitting freezing at 0 degrees when water freezes, a little snowflake icon will appear on the display, which is pretty cool. So you can't mess this thing up by wiring it backwards. The only thing you'll mess up is that the temperature will show up in the wrong setting. So it's all good. Anyway, so I've got some wires here, and this is just what I happen to have on hand. It's high temperature silicone sheath 16 gauge wire. Way overkill for this. You could probably use like 26 gauge and it would be fine. It does call for a 2 amp fuse. I don't have a 2 amp fuse. I'm not super worried about it. Like, there is a 10 amp fuse for the accessory circuit. I do have a 5 amp fuse, but I feel like that's kind of ridiculous to put in because we have the 10 amp fuse in there. I know it's not 2 amp, but since my wiring is 16 gauge, I'm not really worried about my wiring melting. I know that this 16 gauge wire can handle 10 amps, so if anything, the device itself will internally melt or something, and I'll deal with it. So anyway, but if you wanted to use an overabundance of caution, then you would put a 2 amp fuse in, like it indicates, between your positive run, whether you wire it backwards to the circuit or not. So so the plug, it comes with a plug here, and it actually comes with a little screwdriver in case you don't have a tiny screwdriver, which I guess is nice. So they are screw down terminals, and you can get away with just screwing down directly onto a wire, but that's not always ideal, and so I like to use ferrules. Sometimes it's hard for me to crimp down onto a small enough ferrule for the connector size. So I'll do a little test and see if this guy will fit in here. If it doesn't fit, then I won't use it. I'll just use the wire itself. And in order to crimp a ferrule, I will use this ferrule crimper, which does a nice crimp all the way around. We are going to be using spade connectors because the accessories circuit on the bike has female spade connectors, so we're going to use male spade connectors. That's what that looks like. This is what a female spade connector looks like, which you'll recognize from the bike. It basically looks the same as that. And these are a standardized size, and they just snap together. I am using the blue one. In my kit, it says that wire gauge, gosh, I know it's going to be hard to see, but it says wire gauge 14 to 16 is the blue one, so I'm using it for my correct wire gauge, but just make sure that you use the correct color for the wire gauge that you're using. So that'll be that. So I have already kind of just twirled together these two conductors, and I'm just going to put a little bit of heat shrink on here just to keep it tidy, but I don't need to heat shrink the whole thing. So let's get going. So this will be a super easy install because again, you can't, if you plug this in backwards, positive to negative, you're not going to mess anything up. It'll just be the wrong temperature indication. So I'm not even worrying about marking these and identifying them. I'm just going to plug them in, see which one comes up, and then if it's the wrong one, I'm just going to switch them around. So these two are going to be going into here. So I'm going to want this to be fairly small. And let me just do a quick test to see if this wire will even crimp down small enough to fit in there with the smallest ferrule connector that I have. It's always good to do a little test first. And I got my favorite wire strippers here. Okay, so in order to crimp these, first of all, will this even fit in here? And yes, it will fit. And when you put this in, you want to make sure that the wire goes all the way to the tip. It's even okay if it goes a little bit beyond the tip because you can always clip it back, but you wanted to make sure that it goes all the way in. And then this one's not orientation specific, but the next crimp we do will be. So just put it in any direction in your crimper. It's ratcheting, so make sure you go all the way, then release. And then we have these nice indentations all the way around that. And that basically just puts a metal tube around it so that when you screw down on that terminal, you're not spreading the wires apart. You're just clamping down directly on that metal tube. So it's always ideal to use a ferrule when you can. But I can see here that it's not going to fit inside of here. So alternatively, what you could do is you could just strip your wire. You could solder it, like just tin your wire so it's all held together, and that's better than nothing. But this specific one doesn't look too bad. It looks like it does have a push plate in there, and it's not a screw going directly into the wire, so I think we'll be okay. All right. So I'm going to want these pretty short, pretty close together. And we'll just, we don't want too much because it doesn't have much to go in. It doesn't have very far to go. Twirl that. Twirl that. Oops. Excuse me. All right, it's all the way open. This wire is tinned, which is nice. So I don't have like exposed copper. So that's why I'm not pre-tinning it with my soldering iron, although soldering iron would be good because it would hold all those strands together. We'll just get that in there. All right, it's nice that they gave us this connector because this way you can wire everything up away from the actual sensor and then just plug it in, which is pretty sweet. Instead of having to wire everything directly to your sensor, and then you would have to maybe do some awkward angles trying to get up in there, or try to like wire everything and then install it. Let's make sure everything is tight. I don't know if this actually can be installed the opposite way, but I'm gonna try, because the adhesive pad is on the back and I want that to be facing my windscreen. I already tested it with it plugged in the opposite direction, and it worked that way. So if this doesn't work, then I'll have to plug it back in. The instructions do tell you, like, hey, connect your temperature sensor in this way, but on the actual temperature sensor, there's zero identification of which wire is which. So I don't think this will work, but let's try it anyway, just in case. Okay, cool. So the opposite side, we're going to be doing spade connectors, like I said. Normally I would identify them in some way, because you do want to know which one's going to be positive, which one's going to be negative. When you're stripping the wires to go into here, basically you want your stripped section of wire to be going inside of this crimp, and you want to see just a tip poke out. You don't want to go too far, and ideally you want it to be inside of this heat shrink. But you do want it to make sure that it goes all the way through. So normally we want to see a bit of the wire poke out the front. And then the rest of it here can all be insulated section. You don't need to strip all the way, because you don't want to expose it. So I'm just going to eyeball that. And then we can always measure inside the crimp itself, just to keep that tidy. So for crimping insulated terminals, because this is an insulated crimp, and insulated means that it's already got heat shrink on it, so you want to make sure that you're using the right jaws for that. A lot of people complain that when they use insulated ones, the crimp damages the insulation, but you got to make sure you're using the right crimp tool. On this one, and pretty much everyone you'll see that has insulated crimps, you'll notice that there's a smaller section here and then a larger section. And if you look at it from the side, you can see inside that the smaller section actually cuts deeper, it bites deeper than the open side, and that's because you are going to put the crimp here right on that small section, and you're going to leave the rest of it here in the wider section. And so it's just going to bite down on that front part, and you want to be cognizant of which orientation you need it in, if that's relevant. In this case, it's not really a big deal, but I like to have it face up so I can see that wire go through. And this one actually has a pretty good bite on it. You'll notice that on this side I've got a color guide, so I'm using the blue, the center position for my blue crimp. But if your crimp tool is different, or you have a different color scheme, make sure that you do that. It is pretty standardized to use red, blue, yellow in the industry, so that is pretty standardized. But if you're having a hard time holding it, you can just click it down to its first click, but this one seems okay. So I'm just gonna push this through, and actually let's just take a look at how much. That's actually not too bad. It's a little bit more than I would want. Let me just trim that a little bit. It's a little bit too long. It's always easier to cut a little bit. Okay, so making sure that we don't lose any of those strands. That's perfect right there. I'm going to carefully take our time. And then you want to squeeze all the way. It's ratcheting, and so it won't release until you've squeezed all the way. There we go. Oh, okay, tug test failed. I pulled it. It didn't bite far enough. This is the 16 to 14 gauge, but it seems like maybe there's not enough wire in there. I'm going to try the smaller one. There we go. If it will fit in here cleanly, then that's no problem. You can use the smaller one. Because this is 16 gauge and maybe it's a little bit small. That looks a lot better. That fit in there really nice. So I'm on the red setting now. Oh yeah. So I'm pulling actually really hard. It's important that you're not gentle on these. You want to make sure that they're actually secured, because you're going to be riding around on your vibrating motorcycle, and you want to make sure that you don't have like wires coming free. That looks a little long as well. Again, you want to make sure that the insulation doesn't go inside of your crimp area, inside of that silver tube, but you do want to make sure that you don't have too much showing. This one's super forgiving. I'm being like overcritical. Like, you could have tons of wire showing behind it because it's all going to get sealed together anyways. It's just, I'm just so accustomed to doing it for work very specifically, so perfect. And I can see just a little bit of, I can see the wire poking out just there. I am going to put dielectric grease on, so we will have that. And these are heat shrink, and they do have adhesive on the inside, so we'll be able to see the adhesive come out as well. This is super useful, by the way. I got myself a pedal, and it's just a pedal with a plug on it. They use it for machines and stuff, but I find it really helpful for my heat gun. So I just plug my heat gun into that, and then my heat gun just activates when I press the pedal down. Cool. So you can see, you might be able to see it, but there's like a little bit of clear adhesive coming out the back there. That's how you know it's fully heated. And there's some adhesive coming out here as well. And even here you can see that it's kind of covering the strands. It looks like it's doing a pretty good job at protecting them, but I will put some dielectric grease on there. So that's our pigtail now. Again, I might have to turn this sensor around because it might not work in this orientation, but we'll test that out. So that's spade connectors. Like I said, preferable to use a fair rule if you can, but I found that usually with the wire sizes I'm using, these are just usually too large to fit inside of the plugs and stuff that I'm using, so I don't often get a chance to use them, but I always try. And spade connectors, super easy. Your accessories plugs on the bike, front and rear, are female, so you're going to want to use male spade connectors, and there's only one port, so you might, if you're connecting multiple accessories to the same accessory plug, you might have to create your own pigtail. So what you can do is, for example, here our 16 gauge wire was a little too large for this blue one, which is supposed to be for 14 to 16 gauge, and we ended up using the smaller size. But let's say I wanted to run the power to two different accessories. I could twist two wires together and put them in here together and then crimp them together, and that could work. And then you could run just that straight to your accessories from the accessory plug, or you might have to create a different one with a splice, maybe, like use the one spade connector coming out of the connector, and then do a splice where you're putting multiple wires in here and then breaking it out. It'll depend on what your application is and what you're doing, but feel free to hit me up if you need any help with that. I'm going to run the wiring around to get that nicely snugged up, and then the sensor I will stick just in here. I don't know if it'll stick. There's a lot of tension on that wire because it's such a short run. I could have maybe made it a little bit longer, but you can see those well, you might be able to see the zap straps back there. So I've just got the two zap straps, quick ties back there, the connector, the sensor. I use the adhesive backing just to tape it to the back there. And then the wire I'm going to use, there's already some existing wiring over here. So that's where I drew my plan from. To go back here, it's going to kind of blend in. And I made sure that I had enough length so that as the handlebars move, it'll have enough length. I'll have to do a full rotation and make sure that there's plenty of slack and that it's not being pulled. But this is a good spot to pull it behind, and I can actually secure it here, which will be, the headlight's not installed right now, but the headlight is going to be inside of here, also covering part of that. So again, inside here I've got my accessories. I don't know which one of these is which. I'll just nominally put this in here, and then I will turn the key and check to see where we're at. Okay, and that's Fahrenheit. I'm glad I checked. So I'll put this up here. And so basically you can just, these spade connectors you just push in and they will not click, but they will kind of have like a positive engagement when they go in. You could put some heat shrink and stuff over here. I know it's going to be hidden back here behind this panel, so I'm just going to put some dielectric grease on it. But here, let me show you the result. Okay, so I've just got the lights off just so you can see it a little bit easier on camera. So there's my 16.3 degrees Celsius. Let me turn the light on now. So yeah, there's a bit of glare coming from the overhead light. It's actually not too bad. In person, it looks totally clear. Like, it's very easy to read. It actually is kind of like a darker yellow in person, kind of like a matte kind of light, which is really nice. So I'm hoping that that will be easy to read in the sun. And putting myself where I would be sitting, like where my head would be when I'm riding, that's super easy to see. I know on camera it doesn't look super easy to see maybe, but it's a nice matte finish. It's super clear. It's off to the side. It's not super bright, which is good because I don't want it to be distracting. I was worried that if it was too bright, I would have to install a switch so I could turn it off if it was distracting me, but that's actually really nice. So I'm really happy with that. I'm happy with the location. I'm happy with how it looks. I think it'll be even better once I reinstall the headlight. I'll just do a quick test to make sure that I can go fully one side to another, and that looks like there's plenty of slack there. I have to reinstall the plastic panel, but I will do that and make sure that everything is tidied away. I've got a couple other projects I'm working on, so yeah, as you can see, it's kind of a mess. I removed the ST2 brake module. Where is it? Here. This guy, I put it in as a test. I didn't like it. It's a mechanical switch. It's really hard to adjust it because you have to angle it properly because it's a mechanical switch. And as you can see in here, there's not really too many places that I can angle it. At first it seemed like it was working, but then afterwards I realized that because of the angle or whatever it was doing, it was just stuck with the brake light on permanently, like just all the time, even when we were just sitting, like with just the bike running at idle. So it didn't really work for me. I'm not happy with it. It's just not reliable enough for me to be comfortable having that on my bike. So I removed it, which is good because now I have more space for other mods. I'm going to be installing a seat heater for my butt. And what else? I got the horns. I got the horns installed. I'm gonna wire them up now, but I think they're gonna look pretty cool. I spray painted the cages for them black. Let me turn this light on so you can actually see, because they actually come with yellow cages, but the yellow wasn't the same as the Husqvarna yellow. It was kind of like more like this yellow, like kind of like a mustardy matte, darker yellow, and I didn't feel like it fit the color scheme. But anyway, it's got some blue in there. I don't really have a ton of blue accents on my bike, but in this area they're probably going to get quite dirty. So I don't know if that'll affect their performance or not. As long as they still function, I don't really care if they get dirty. So we'll just see how it goes. But this bracket here isn't a super, it's not the best bracket to have installed the horn on. You can see just right here, there's not a lot of threads left on this nut, but I didn't really know where else to put it. I'd have to put it sideways maybe, and I didn't really want to do that. So my screw broke off again. It just disappeared into the void, and I have to drill that out, so that's going to be fun. The first time was a giant pain in the ass, but to Evotech's credit, they have manufactured some higher strength bolts for me, and they're in the mail now. So they're sending those out, and I'm going to be replacing all these bolts with higher strength, higher grade bolts, and that should hopefully fix the issue. The other 3 bolts have been fine. I think it's just some weird thing where there's like pressure being put on this bolt somehow from this bracket, because this is, part of the engine mount. So it's, it's directly connected to the engine. There's a lot of vibration there. So anyway, I forgot, but the rear accessories, if you wanted to know where they are, it's super easy. You just pop off your passenger seat and you'll just see it says accessories right here on these 2 connectors. They're pretty easy to find, and again, they're just female spade connectors. Again, just as a reminder, accessories 2 is the switched one, and accessories 1 is the hot one that's always connected. So just make sure you don't burn your battery up. So that's pretty much it. I'll talk more about mods and other projects I'm doing later. Hope you guys are doing good. Hope you're still able to ride. Here it's super rainy, and I still ride in the rain, but it is pretty cold, and we're getting right close to that point where we're at freezing. So I don't want to ride around and slip, but I'm going to ride as much as I can, and that's where this outside air temperature sensor will help, because just because the weather report says it's X degrees today doesn't mean that like at different altitudes it's at different temperatures. This way I can stay safer by knowing what temperature it is wherever I'm at. And I hope you find that useful. This wasn't super cheap. This sensor was $100, but it was hard for me to find a sensor that looked good, that had a really nice display, that would be legible in the sunlight, that was fully waterproof. And Blue Sea is known for making really high quality products, so I finally bit the bullet and decided to buy this one and find a way to install it on the bike. That being said, if you want one, you don't have to strap it to the back of your windscreen. You could probably mount it inside the fairing somewhere if you wanted to. It would be really difficult to read from there though. Or, you could maybe find some other place to put, I don't know where you would put it, but you could find another place to put it maybe. But I'm really happy with that. I'll let you know how it goes. All right, cheers. Bye.